Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Open to Work Beyond the Label, the podcast where we spotlight incredible professionals who are navigating transition, growth, and reinvention. In this space, we share real stories and real strategies that help people step into their next chapter with confidence. Today's guest is someone I truly admire, Erica Finley. For more than a decade, Erica has blended her background as a professional storyteller and her passion for connecting people, helping some of the biggest SaaS companies in the world maximize their impact. She's known for building trust and turning passive audiences into thriving, loyal communities. Outside of work, she's also a writer, a theater lover, photographer, and pop culture fan. I know this conversation is going to inspire anyone who's looking to elevate their career, whether you're job searching, reinventing, or simply looking to grow in your current role. Erica, thank you for joining us.
What an intro. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so amped to be here.
So, first of all, let me just say I met Erica through Girls Club, and Erica did build a thriving community that I was a part of. And so I'm so happy for us to reconnect because it's been too long. And I think that this session is just going to be really insightful and honestly just a lot of fun.
I just feel like our relationship was just very organic from the jump. Like, I feel like we met, via Zoom or like in Slack, and I was like, this is my person. Like we got this. And
I
yeah, I'm
love
so
it.
glad we could come together again.
Can we also talk about, which we haven't talked about yet, is that we're kind of wearing the same thing?
Literally, I'm so happy you got the chambray memo because we're transitioning to fall.
Exactly. But mine is actually like okay, it's like a sweat. Actually, it's not jean.
Got it. Got it.
I
Well,
got matching
similar but
pants too.
different.
Okay, so Erica, for listeners who might not know you yet, how do you like to introduce yourself?
Gosh, I think ultimately I just describe myself as a professional fangirl. Like, that is just a thread that has been a part of me, like going all the way back to like AOL chat rooms, talking about NSYNC and Backstreet Boys, finding my people, connecting the dots. Like, that's just who I've always been. And so obviously that's on the personal side. Professionally, if you would have told me, 15 years ago that I could get paid to be that dot connector and bring people together, I probably would have called you a liar. But thankfully, these days, that is absolutely a thing. And so, personally, I'm hanging out with my people. Professionally, I'm bringing folks together around shared values, interests, and just trying to build people up. So, it's a lot of fangirl stuff. Like you said, I'm a huge theater nerd. I love Taylor Swift. That's how we started our conversation today. Like, if I'm a fan of something, I'm not going to be really quiet about it.
We have to talk about the fact that you're a New Yorker. I mean, maybe you're not a New Yorker, like you weren't born there, but you
Yeah.
are a New Yorker. So you've been in New York for 14 years. What's one thing the city has taught you that you feel like you couldn't have learned anywhere else?
Yeah. Well, I just want to thank you for giving me a platform to talk about the city that I love. I feel like it is my longest, healthiest relationship. But I really think when I moved here, and it's going to sound a little cliche, but it is like so true for me down to my marrow, is that one, I learned to be a heck of a lot more independent. And second of all, I learned to like trust myself a lot more. I moved from Michigan. I'm a Midwest gal, and I kind of feel like I'm a recovering people pleaser. And when I came here, I feel like I became very grounded in a lot of the like major pillars of my life, whether that's socially, politically, professionally. Like, I found my people and feel like I really settled into a more evolved version of myself. And I moved here at a pretty formative time. I was like 26 at the time. So, like, you're still kind of young, but you kind of feel like you have some things figured out. New York is such a, like, crash course in really figuring things out because you're just exposed to so much, right?
Yeah.
Like, the second you step out the door, it's like a brave new world every time. And so Yeah, I think those are the 2 biggest things, and it's crazy because I never had big dreams of moving to the city. I was just kind of content where I was, kind of felt like I was always gonna be a Midwest gal. But now it's hard to imagine living anywhere else because, like I said, it has shown me so much and given me so much. And I hope that I've also given back to it in meaningful ways. Like, you want to talk about like building a community, like that has been so important to me from the beginning. So trust, independence, all that jazz. Yeah.
Isn't it so nice to be able to like really be yourself? I feel like in New York, you are who you are, and if you don't like it, then don't like it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, there's kind of nowhere to hide, right? Because it is more of a grind day to day. You really kind of like figure out what you're made of. And I don't say that to like deter people from visiting here, from moving here, because I kind of feel like if I can do it, anyone can. But it is not for the faint-hearted. And, you really have to navigate the ups and downs, and it will eat you up if you're not if you're not showing her a mutual respect. So yeah, like I said, at the end of the day, I'm just so grateful for everything that it has illuminated for me in my life.
Yeah. I didn't grow up living in the city. I did for short periods of time when I was a kid.
Yeah.
But I will say that I'm grateful having come from there, moving to California. It is very different. I love it here. It's beautiful, all the things. But what I always say about New York is you're never going to question where you stand with someone. Like,
Mm.
it's just very outspoken. It's okay to be direct. And honestly, I feel like that's the best way to communicate because so often we get lost or we have miscommunications just based on someone not wanting to just kind of spit it out, like speak your truth. And so in New York, I feel like we can spit it out, we can speak our truth. We might have a little tussle in the process, but we're going to get through it on the other side, you know?
Yeah, and there's so much clarity and confidence that comes with having that strong point of view because, to your point, you can't be wishy-washy, you can't be waffly when, the city around you is moving 90 miles an hour. And I live in Brooklyn very purposefully because you can kind of like take a breath and exhale a little bit here. It's a little bit quieter, but yeah, you gotta cut your teeth on all of the things that the city has to offer you.
Totally. Well, New York, I could talk about New York all day, but what I want to move into is some of the some of your experience, your career, your transition, and your growth. So you've worked with some of the biggest software companies, software as a service companies. What's one lesson from those environments that prepares you for wherever you're headed next in your career?
Yeah. It is kind of crazy when I think about kind of the tech companies that are on my resume just because I never like sought out or intended to land in tech. So again, I just feel so grateful that I found my way to ed tech when I was working at 2U and then ultimately to, the Bitleys and the Trellos of the world because again, I really figured out what it meant to be a community builder
Yeah,
because there's no roadmap for that, right? Like, obviously, now we have a lot of tooling and resources and wonderful people who, can kind of show us the way. But I was kind of on the front end of that, just kind of like meandering around in the dark and figuring out how to build something meaningful. And so, yeah, you get to Atlassian and HubSpot, and so grateful to work at both of those companies because leadership was really bought into community from the top down. That is not the case everywhere. The fascinating thing about community, whether you're working at like a giant B2B SaaS company or like a scrappy startup that's just kind of like figuring things out, as a community builder, you don't necessarily need to know anything and everything about the persona that you're building for. You just kind of have to be curious about these folks and what makes them tick and what can we build that's different from everything else that's out there. And that's where the real joy comes from. So I think, as I think about where I've been with these big SaaS companies and even when I was working for smaller companies, the common thread is really just being curious about who you're building for and never making any assumptions about what should be built. Like my mantra as a community builder is that I don't make any assumptions and I'm going to co-create with my community members, by my side, because if I'm building community in a silo, who is that helping? So I have the roadmap, I have the things in my toolkit, but it's really about paying attention to the folks who are going to be in the community and building something meaningful for them. You mentioned the women in sales group that I put together. I certainly didn't know anything about your world and the challenges and, what gets you up in the morning. And so that's part of the joy, was having conversations with folks like yourself and really figuring out what we could build.
I do want to ask,
Yeah.
are there any like for people who don't know what community is, are there any like awesome communities that come to mind today that you're like, "Oh, this is a community that like makes sense for the normal person in their day-to-day life?"
At its core, it is literally just bringing people together around a shared interest, a shared value. I happen to, like I said, work in the tech space, so I build around, products or services, folks who are already kind of like amped about, the Trellos of the world or the HubSpots of the world, and, give them the resources and the tools they need to thrive, whatever that looks like in their world. Communities exist for anything under the sun. It's really about like finding your people and getting in a physical or virtual room with them and just sharing ideas and resources. And yeah, again, that's kind of what the Women in Sales group was about, bringing folks together who were women in sales leadership to say, like, hey, I'm really struggling with this. Has anyone else tackled that? And if so, like, how did you handle it? But yeah, you can find a community for just about anything. Like, new moms, Taylor Swift fans. It gets really niche. And I think magic happens when it gets really niche, because that's when you really know you found your people. But it's often just a quick Google search away, depending on the stuff that really lights you up. Yeah, finding other folks who are also lit up by that particular
Yeah.
interest.
You know, I don't use Reddit, but like Reddit is kind of like the biggest community of all communities, right?
Absolutely. They've written the book on a lot of community best practices. There are a lot of what I would consider, micro communities on
Yeah.
there. Any topic you can imagine, folks are in there chatting about it, and yeah, it's fun.
Yeah. I mean, I think from a business point of view, community is critical. Like I think about I work with Salesforce all day every day.
Yep.
The Trailblazer community.
Yeah.
People who are so like just everything that they do is Salesforce and they keep getting these badges and they keep climbing and they get the jacket and they got the some people have the gold jacket, you know what I'm saying? Like it is
Yeah.
like you want to be a trailblazer, a trail ranger, like there's all these different terminologies like and it must take so much to build something like that. And you've been at the forefront of some of those communities. So for a company maybe that doesn't have a community, like what are some recommendations that you would have in terms of getting that started?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Salesforce, obviously a huge heavy hitter in the community space. But even when I worked at Atlassian, like the community there started very organically with a bunch of admins who were just amped about Jira or Confluence and wanted to get together with other people who were using it. And then eventually Atlassian notices this and says, hey, can we throw some resources your way? A lot of it happens organically like that. And I think if you're one of the smaller guys, or, you see the value in community, but you're like, I don't really know what that means for my business or service, it literally starts with conversations with your customers. Obviously, your best customers, folks who tend to raise their hands for things or are very vocal or opinionated. Those are the people that you want to wrangle and embrace from the beginning and say, hey, we're looking to build this thing. We want you to be on the cutting edge of it and kind of help build it with us. And people feel very empowered by that, by the way. Like, you would be so shocked how many people just feel honored that in Atlassian, a HubSpot, a Trello wants to have a conversation about that. Like, they're pouring so much of their day-to-day into these tools and services. So for you to be able to shine a spotlight on them or say, hey, we want to create something cool with you. People love that. So even if it's not happening organically, having that conversation with your best customers and saying, does this make sense? If we built this thing on X platform, would you hang out here? Just doing those like mini focus groups or even surveys at the very beginning can be so illuminating in terms of, hey, this is what we should run toward, or actually, there isn't an appetite for this, and maybe we should kind of pump the brakes for a minute. Those people will always bubble to the surface, and they'll stick around with you for a really long time for the most part. Yeah.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
There's so many ways I think about it. Like we have advisory boards and now you have me thinking about like strategies that I would use to go deeper, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's really what it's about. Like a community is supposed to be kind of a water cooler or a safe space for your customers to go, for your prospects to go and get information that they can't just Google on their own, right? There's a lot of good information out there. Obviously, if you search Atlassian keywords, you're going to get links to the community and that kind of thing. But that's where the meat and potatoes of these conversations are happening. If they're happening anyway, you may as well be involved and be a part of it and say like, "Hey, have you thought about this?" or "Hey, I can actually introduce you to, X person." And that's where the magic happens. You kind of like give them the resources, give them the tools, and then get the hell out of their way. And it's a really wonderful thing to watch. Yeah.
Yeah. That's really cool. Okay, so you always captivate me when you're telling me stories. So
Thank
how
you.
has telling helped in your career? Because you are very good at it.
I appreciate that. And it's funny because I just had a conversation with someone else whose career is rooted in journalism. So, like, that's what my degree is in. I worked at like traditional newspapers for a handful of years before I realized that it was maybe time to pivot and parlay my skills into something else. But I was chatting with her and I was like, storytelling feels like such a superpower. Part of community is telling customer stories, right? So, when you're having these conversations with your customers or your prospects, reporting back to internally your boss, your executive team and saying like this is the impact we're having, but then publicly again, people love a spotlight. They love to have 5 minutes of internet fame, and so if you know how to ask the right questions and really talk to these folks and get at the meat of why they're there and why this community matters to them, you can share a lot publicly and internally that maybe feels fluffier or more anecdotal, but at the end of the day, that's where the true impact comes from. So if you can build a strong narrative, that's half the battle sometimes.
Yeah, I'm very often asking people to be more brief. Like, I just feel like sometimes people tell me this long narrative, and I'm like, can you just get to the point? Because I don't have a lot of time, you know what I'm saying? So, like, I'm having this battle in my head now that we're talking because you're telling me such a good story. Like, I could listen to you all day. But then on the flip side, there's times where I'm like, can you get to the point? So, actually, I do think being able to tell a story is a critical skill. And when you can tell a good story, you can captivate audiences, you can get people to want to hear more and to ultimately you can accelerate your career by just telling good stories.
Yes, yes. And I think a lot of that is being hyper aware and cognizant of where the story is going to be told or shared. Like, what platform is this happening on? Like, I remember in my work at HubSpot, a lot of my role involved kind of like cold messaging my coworkers that, like, don't know who I am, don't know what I'm trying to build. I'm a DM in Slack while they're trying to go about their day to day. And so I had to get really good at kind of my elevator pitch, basically,
Yeah.
like, "Hey, I'm Erica, I work on the community team. This is the context for why I'm reaching out to you. Here's the question I have for you. Can you let me know by end of day Friday?" And so I think succinctness and brevity in that very particular context is so helpful, because you kinda need to paint the picture for who the heck you are and why you're spending time with this person, but, and then there are opportunities to be more verbose, whether it's on your company blog and you're sharing a customer story, or On LinkedIn, that's a great place to share customer stories and really elevate your community members. So I think a good storyteller knows the time and the place and the audience as well.
That's really great point because it does matter what medium in which you're communicating. As an example, if you send me a long email, again, same thing. I'm not going to read it.
Yes.
But if
Too long
you
to
give
read.
me a phone call, I'm more likely to listen to more of those words than if you
Yes.
had sent me an email with all of those words.
100%. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the medium matters and the audience matters too. Some people have more time than others. Like when you're at dinner with your girlfriend, you want to tell a good story. But when you're in front of a CEO, they're like, nope, like, can you get to the point? So the audience matters, the medium matters, the message needs to be powerful to the point. But if it's a good story, tell it.
100%. No notes.
A lot of people actually think they're good communicators and they say they're good communicators, but you've actually built spaces where thousands of people can be seen and heard. So,
Yeah.
what do you think separates somebody who is just good with words versus someone who can truly create connection?
I hope it doesn't sound too cliche, but I think the foundation here is trust. We're in the AI era, and sometimes you have to be really skeptical about what you're seeing and hearing online. Trust is fundamental in building the relationships that I've fortunately been able to build. Like, I think about when I was working at Atlassian, I was working more on kind of the advocacy loyalty side of the house. So, folks who were really amped about Atlassian tools and services, it was my job to make sure that they were getting what they needed and also bring more folks into the fold and find other people who were excited and say, like, hey, did you know that we have this really cool program? And I still talk to a lot of those humans. And that may seem like not that big a deal, whatever. It was a work relationship, professional, relationship, whatever. But I think that speaks to the fact that I was building truly authentic connections with these humans. I was listening to, again, what makes them tick? Like, why are they a part of this community? Are they trying to level up at work? Do they want to look good in front of their boss? They would tell me about, their kids and life stuff that was happening. All of that has transcended my time at Atlassian, and I think that's really meaningful and special. Like, obviously we did something that clicked, and that means a lot to me. And so that's kind of my approach to community building is to just be super authentic, be vulnerable myself. Like, I'm not coming in sounding like a robot and saying, okay, this is what we as a business are trying to accomplish. Like, join us or, move along. It's really about like, hey, this is something that I care about. I see that you care about it. There's like kind of that mutual respect there. And yeah, you got to build that trust because otherwise you've got nothing.
Yeah. You know what I think about as you like tell that story is you, a human, a person, anybody, a business can post on LinkedIn as an example,
Yes.
right? You can post anything, but the businesses and the brands that have loyalty and trust get true, authentic engagement. And
Yes.
engagement is so different than likes and comments.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And that's why when I say, like, brands that are building these communities or whatever, there are really, like, meaty conversations happening kinda behind the scenes in these communities that you just can't get to on a LinkedIn, on a Twitter or an X. Like, those can be very, like, kind of like one way. It kinda starts to feel like a megaphone where the brand's just sort
Yeah.
of shouting at you, and a community kind of, like, levels the playing field and says, like, no, like, this is a discussion, this is a conversation to be had, and let's have an exchange of ideas, thoughts, feedback, that kind of thing. So that's how I make a distinction between social media, which people often will kind of lump in with community building, and like the actual community building that's happening over here.
Yeah. Okay. So, with all of these projects that you've worked on and communities that you've engaged in and built, what's one of the most rewarding projects or moments that you've had in your career?
So there was one human in particular when I was building community at Atlassian, still talk to her to this day, but she went out of her way one day to send an email to me. And, she worked in tech, and that can be a tricky space to be when you're a woman.
Yeah.
Some unique challenges. But she was like, as a woman who wears a headscarf, your professionalism and your empathy and your kindness really helped me build confidence in what I was doing. Like, I felt seen as a human, as someone who is wanting to add value to the space. And so it was just kind of like a gratitude email to me and the relationship that we had built. And I probably think about that email like once per quarter. It could make me cry if I let it, but it goes to show how important it is to build diverse communities, to build inclusive communities, to create a space where I'm not going to feel silly if I have to throw out maybe kind of a rudimentary question or something, I feel like I should already know at this point in my career. And so, yeah, I'm just a big fan of that particular community member, and it just meant a lot that she took some time to say, "Hey, this has made a difference for me."
That's so sweet that person reached out. It's like when you see somebody doing something great and you think it, you should say it out loud and you should say it to them. That could make all the difference in someone's day, in someone's life, in your case, every quarter.
And email their boss and tell them, like, "Hey, Laura went above and beyond for me today, and I just needed you to know that. And she made my life easier, and it's made this impact." Like that stuff really moves the needle, like in a professional setting. So yeah, whether it's your coworker or a community member, definitely be free flowing with the compliments. Absolutely.
Yeah, you never know who needs it at any given moment, who could use that one kind word, that one kind piece of feedback that could make someone just feel so good. And why not? Like, let's spread the love.
Absolutely.
So, okay, when people work with you, Erica, what do you hope they say about you um, after working with you?
Such a great question. If I'm thinking of like the community members that I've worked with, in all of my various roles, I hope they feel like I never asked them to be a part of something that I didn't also believe in. When you're a community builder for a SaaS company, for a brand or whatever, there's a delicate balance that you need to kind of adjust to, where it's like, I know over here, like, this is what the business is asking of me. These are kind of the KPIs, these are the targets that I'm trying to hit. But how can I translate that for an actual human who might be a woman in sales leadership and has 91 things on her plate, and I am like another another ask or another, contribution. How can I strike that balance between what the business needs and what these community members need? And I think a good community builder can bridge that gap, can speak both of those languages. There have been instances where, something is presented, an idea is brought forth, and I'm like, "You know what? That's not going to work for these folks, specifically because of XYZ." So, um yeah, I kind of go mama hen a little bit with my community members, which is important. So, yeah, just that I've built things that I hope people believe in, and that the community members felt protected and safe in the spaces that I've created.
I will say there are a lot of executives who think they know what is good for their customers, for their employees, whatever the case may be, but they're not close enough to the ground. And I'm not saying that they're wrong for that. I'm saying that their job is to be up here. And if your job
Correct.
is to be down here, it is critical that you send the information back up. If they're saying, oh, we should do this, and that's not right because you're on the ground and you know differently, you have to send that information back up. And at the end of
Yes.
the day, those executives will appreciate you and value you for sharing feedback that they needed to hear. So don't be quiet in those use cases. I love that you're saying you'll push back and protect your community, because at the end of the day, I think the executives appreciate your insight and perspective and you pushing back.
Yeah, yeah. And that is a muscle that I'm still actively building, to be clear, because my tendency as a girl from the Midwest is to be the people pleaser, to be the yes person, to say, whatever you need, I'm on it, no worries. But that doesn't work in today's modern business environment. It just doesn't. And there are a lot of places that people can go for communities now. And so if you want to build something that is worth your time and theirs, you have to have these foundational pillars. And like I said, be willing to say no if it doesn't make sense for your humans.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. That's really insightful. So, we've talked a lot about career and community. Let's talk a little bit outside of work. So, outside of work, your love for writing, theater, photography clearly feeds your creativity. So, how do these passions influence you overall from a professional perspective?
But like, how much time do you have? Like, you keep saying, like, the magic words, and, like, live theater is just I was a late adopter to it. The first, like, actual touring production of a Broadway show I saw in Kalamazoo, Michigan, and it was Wicked. And I was like, "This is kind of cool." But until I moved to New York, I didn't have the access to this, but live theater fills up my cup in so many joyful, magical ways. And there's something so special about seeing people on stage who are so dedicated to their craft and so good at it and just have this like raw passion for what they're doing. And so if I'm pulling anything from that in my professional ecosystem, which obviously looks very different than singing, acting, and dancing, it's pulling that passion and that desire to be the best of and to like innovate in whatever space you happen to be in. You know, I want to be the Kelly O'Hara of community building or like the Audra McDonald of community building. You know, it's just so inspirational to see folks who have dedicated their lives to something like this. And the fact that I happen to work, you know, in an industry, in a niche that does fill up my cup as well. And, you know, that's just I'm just so grateful for that. But yeah, just paying attention to those folks on stage and drawing inspiration from that.
Yeah, well, I hear those people work really hard, long hours, day
They
over
do.
day, and they give their body, their mind, their soul to their craft.
Yeah, yeah. But I think there's a lot of boundaries there too. You know, when you are essentially an athlete, which these folks are, they're taking care of their mental health and they're taking care of their physical bodies so that they can show up for these audiences, you know, 8 days a week. So I think that's also something to be pulled from that experience because as a community builder, it can be really easy to feel like you're always on. The same thing with, you know, if you work in social media, you might feel like you need to respond to things that are happening in real time, but I think that's a muscle I've built over time as well is establishing those boundaries and saying like, you know, if I don't respond to this message because it's 6 p.m. Eastern, like it will still be there tomorrow and nothing is broken and everything's okay. So, yeah, boundaries are an important lesson to learn as well.
Totally. Because if you're not taking care of your body, your mind, you show up in a very different way. When you are well rested, you have had time to enjoy life outside of your career, you come in ready to go.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, as you look ahead to your next chapter, what types of roles or opportunities are you most excited about, and how can listeners who believe in your story help open the right doors for you?
Yeah. I feel like I've been doing a lot of reflection. I've had a lot of selfie time to decide what I want to be when I grow up. I'm certainly looking for like senior level community roles. I have been an individual contributor for the bulk of my professional career and I glean a lot of value out of that. I just like doing good work. And so I don't necessarily have to have folks reporting to me to glean all of that value, although my heart is open to that. But I've been thinking a lot about like the types of companies that I want to work for. And I think I'm looking for a company where there aren't a lot of egos, which may be a tall order. Because again, we work in tech, so it can be a little tricky sometimes. But yeah, I want to work for people who, are bought in and believe in community. That's really important. And an organization that is like overly transparent is really important to me. Like I want to know how we're doing. I want to know like if I'm having an impact, all of that. So those are things that are definitely important. If folks know of anyone who wants to get into community and just wants to have a conversation with me, I'm certainly open to those types of coffee chats. Or yeah, if you're looking to maybe build your community function from the ground up, that really lights me up. So I'm happy to have conversations about that. But yeah, I'm on LinkedIn a lot, so you'll find me very quickly.
I love it. Well, yeah,
Yeah.
I can definitely say that sitting here talking to you, you're going to make an impact wherever you end up. And
I hope so.
you will. And I will also say this because I can clip it and post it. Organizations need to encourage their employees to check the ego at the door. We can't go in to work every day with an ego. There's going to be times where we know that we're right and where we need to fight for what's right, absolutely. But we also need to be open-minded and hear other positions before making that very hard line in the sand on my opinion. Because
Yeah.
the reality is that the world is moving so quickly and we need to understand that we don't know everything and other people's perspectives matter. And in this world where there's so much content, there's so much going on, we need to hear perspectives. We can't just have our ego get in the way and say, oh, I know this is going to work because I've been doing it this way for 20 years. Like, all right, well, that was 20 years ago. So, like, let's move forward. So, anyway, forget the egos, is how I feel.
Amen. Amen.
I tell salespeople that all the time. I'm like, "Can you leave your ego at the door? Because I got feedback for you."
And that's the thing, like, I never assume that I'm the smartest person in the room. Like, I have a lot of great experience and I have a lot of confidence in that experience and, where I've been and the cool things I've done. But you gotta assume that someone in the room is gonna teach you something new or like offer you a different way of thinking about things. And so I think you have to be very open hearted to that and be open to feedback, by the way. I hope that is something that folks who have worked with me would also say is that I am very open hearted to that because I wanna pivot. I wanna do better. I wanna optimize. Like I said, I wanna be the best at what I do. So I think that candor and transparency is beyond valuable as a community builder.
Yeah, if I'm the smartest person in the room, I'm in the wrong room, first of all.
Very that.
Second of all, like, give me all the feedback. I'm not gonna get any better if I don't hear feedback, and by the way, I take feedback from everyone. I don't care what your position is. You could be a 5-year-old, I'll hear your feedback. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. My ears are open. Yes.
I love it. Okay, so my last question for you is you're a big Taylor Swift fan. I know that for a fact now. If you had to pick one lyric that sums up your professional journey going forward, what would it be?
I mean, this is like asking me to like pick a favorite child. Like this is cruel and unusual punishment. But the one thing that did come to mind with this is everything you lose is a step you take. And that's from You're on Your Own, Kid. Which is just kind of a very anthemic, incredible, like, pop song to begin with, but it became very, like, emblematic of a lot of, like, Taylor Swift fans' experiences and, like, growing up and having your heart broken or, not getting an opportunity that you thought you were so qualified for, and so that line really resonates with me because I've never been the type of person to, like, face a setback and then just sort of like wallow in that and be like, woe is me. What am I going to do? Like, there is some time that you should set aside for that to create space, to feel disappointed, to feel sad. But then it's like, okay, like, what's next? Like, what can I glean from what has happened here and kind of transform that into something that is productive. And maybe that's the Virgo in me where I'm like, we always got to be optimizing. We got to be learning. We got to figure out what the roadmap is, like what's, the sixth step from where we're at right now. But Yeah, I think everything has been a learning opportunity for me because I certainly have had my own ebbs and flows, in tech and community building, but I think I've been able to take what I've learned and really apply it and turn it into something meaningful.
I love that. Can you say the lyric again?
Yeah, I wrote it down too because I didn't wanna misquote, Taylor Allison Swift. "Everything you lose is a step you take."
Wow, that is
Yeah.
powerful. And to your point, and I'm sorry, I used to like Taylor, and it's not that I don't like her, I just don't listen to it. So maybe I need to listen to
Sure.
this song, and I will.
Yeah.
Um, but I will say that the people I see stay still in life are the people that are constantly focused on what happened and not how do I move forward. And so I do think that is incredible feedback that you need to figure out what's the go forward path because we're all gonna, at the end of the day, fall down. How do you
Yeah.
get back up and how do you keep going versus focusing on the fact that you fell down and now, like, what are you gonna stay on the floor and roll? You've gotta pick yourself up and move forward. Like, and that's critical. So that's great
Yeah.
feedback.
And I think that's something that resonates with a lot of folks right now because the job market is so tough and because a lot of people are thinking about maybe becoming career changers for the first time in their existence. And so, yeah, just thinking about the skills you have and parlaying that into like what you want to do and then just sort of like up leveling yourself and developing those skills and talking to the people who are doing the cool things that you hope to be doing. Yeah, again, huge learning opportunities in that.
Thank you, Erica. I loved your energy the moment I met you. So I'm so happy that the universe brought us together and gave us this opportunity to have this conversation today. Is there any final words that you'd like to leave with our audience today?
My gosh, no pressure whatsoever. Connect with me on LinkedIn. Like I said, I love dot connecting, making connections where I can, hanging out on LinkedIn. You like I said, you can find me there, but um yeah, let's chat. Let's have a conversation.
Love it. Anyone who is listening who is open to work, I hope that this was an impactful conversation for you, number one. But number two, if you're ready to step into the spotlight, reach out, let me know. We're ready. And I'm calling this season two because I needed to take a short break. But here we are, season two. I'm ready for more guests and I'm looking forward to more conversations. So thank you again, Erica, for being our first guest on season two and looking forward to even more conversations going forward.
Thanks, y'all.